Hey, it's Ryan, and welcome to episode 3 of The Ryan Ingraham Show. And in today's episode, we're going to do a little bit of 2020 NFL mock draft analysis. And I think this one will be kind of interesting because I really like to try to think put myself in the shoes of like NFL teams, I guess, and see like, okay, what would they need and trying to find the best pick for them. So I think this one is going to be pretty fun. I mean, I will say up front though, I am no NFL coach, I'm no NFL scout. So, I might not have the best ideas, but I think I have some pretty good points. And with that being said, let's jump right into it. So first let's start. The mock draft I got is from draftsite.com. Their 2020 mock draft. So let's start. So the first overall pick, already one I don't 100% agree with. And this is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals taking Joe Burrow, quarterback out of LSU. And it's kind of weird. Like, it's basically consensus that Joe Burrow is going to go to Cincinnati. And if I had to guess, I'd probably say Cincinnati will draft him. But I feel like this is kind of a mistake. And the reason why, it's not because Joe Burrow is not good. You know what I mean? To be honest, I haven't even done enough. I haven't done any like film analysis on him. Like, you know what I mean? I haven't really gone that deep into it. But just from a basic perspective, that I don't think drafting a quarterback will change your team that much. Like, if let's say they drafted Joe Burrow, how would that change their team? Really? I mean, you could say, oh, it gets rid of Andy Dalton. But my idea is like, I don't think Joe Burrow will outplay Andy Dalton immediately. I mean, like, I feel like to think that is kind of, I feel like it just doesn't seem logical. Like, you're just going to bring in Joe Burrow and your team's just going to transform overnight. I feel like that's a little bit unrealistic. So I feel like there's better picks in this position. Like, and one reason why I say that is, well, a good example, it's a good case study, is Josh Rosen from a few years ago. He got drafted to the Arizona Cardinals, and where is he now? I mean, like, does anyone? I know where he is, but do a lot of people know where he is? He kind of disappeared off the map. He went to the Cardinals, and now he's on the Dolphins. He went from bad team to worst team. I won't say bad, but he went from a rebuilding team to an even more rebuilding team, and his career is basically over. He's benched on the Dolphins behind Fitzmagic. Yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick, the quarterback from the Dolphins. So he's basically on the bench over there, and his career is, I mean, it's looking a little rocky right now. I think he could be good though if a team picks him up. You know what I mean? It's a more developed team. I feel like that's what I'm trying to say. Like, I feel like a team shouldn't take a quarterback until they're a little bit more developed. And there've been like some rumors, like not the Patriots are going to pick up Josh Rosen and then he's just going to become like a star or something. You know what I mean? Like, obviously the guy is skilled. Like, you look at his numbers out of UCLA. I think he came out of UCLA. I'm not even 100% sure, but yeah, you look at his numbers out of there. Obviously the guy's skilled. So, and I just feel like he didn't get maybe the fairest shot in Arizona or even Miami. So yeah, that's why I feel like taking Joe Burrow would be a mistake. I feel like he might end up like Josh Rosen, and it's sad to say, but I feel like Joe Burrow will struggle. If the Bengals take him, I feel like he will struggle. For those reasons, I feel like they're just not as developed as they need to be. Like, so for example, I actually got some stats pulled up right here. So when it comes to sacks, the Bengals got sacked 43 times. Have been sacked 43 times this season. That's good for 9th in the NFL. 9th worst in the NFL. So their offensive line is struggling. And then when it comes to defense, the Bengals have 23 sacks in the season. So that means they're off. That means that the other team's defenses will be fresh. Like, they won't be they don't have to always come out like, and that's why I feel like the idea of a sack is such a powerful, I guess you could say, stat. It really tells a lot about your team. Not in all cases, but I feel like it really does, because if you're not getting a lot of sacks, that means their offense is out, their defense gets to rest. So then finally, when your offense comes out, their defense is fresh. And then if your team can't defend against sacks, then they're just going to sack you, and you're going to go 3 and out or whatever. So I feel like it's a really important statistic. So with that being said, I feel like the best pick for Bengals would probably be Chase Young, the defensive end out of Ohio State. Why? Because defensive end's the position that gets the most sacks. Like, I think it's just that important of a statistic. It's so important, I find. So yeah, then for the next pick in this draft, it's got the New York Giants taking Chase Young out of the defensive end at Ohio State. And this pick, I totally agree with. I mean, like, can you really hurt taking more defensive line talent, I guess you could say, like defensive end specifically, because I feel like defensive line is a little bit. I feel like defensive linemen are a little bit not overrated. I wouldn't say that, but I would say like not as important of a position, because since they're lined up straight on, it's harder for them to gain an advantage. It's harder for them to gain an advantage than those on the edge. So yeah, I feel like defensive end is more important. But yeah, Chase Young, considered the best edge rusher from the class. I think it's probably the best pick here for the Dolphins. Best player in the draft? I mean, I don't know if I can say that, but let's just say I feel like he might be the most impactful out of a lot of these players. So obviously, I think that's a good pick. Next, we got the Dolphins taking. This draft has Dolphins taking Justin Herbert, quarterback out of Oregon, and this pick I think is interesting. I've never actually seen a draft of them taking Justin Herbert at 3rd overall. Once again, I'm not a huge fan of it for the same reasons that I didn't like the Bengals taking Joe Burrow, and it's just because the Dolphins right now are in shambles. Like, they actually won a few games. I saw some, like, everyone's like joking, oh yeah, the Dolphins might go 0-16 or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? They ruined their perfect season by getting a win, but like I said, I think getting a quarterback here is just not the best idea for them. Like, they, just like the Bengals, they actually were the worst in the league with they've gotten 18 sacks on the year. So that means the other defenses are going to be fresh. Their defense is going to be tired. So it's just going to make Justin Herbert's job even worse. And then when it comes to getting sacked, the Dolphins are worst in the league, taking 54 sacks this season. So you bring in Justin Herbert, and he's coming in. The defenses are fresh, and his offensive line is not that good. So he's just getting pounded, and like, I feel like he'll struggle too if they take him there. But Dolphins have a lot of first-round picks this year, so I think they're going to draft some linemen to actually help him out. So that would be helpful. But yeah, I feel like taking Justin Herbert here wouldn't be maybe the best pick, because I feel like he might not be that much of an improvement over Fitzpatrick or even Rosen behind him. So yeah, that's my opinion on that. Next, we have the Redskins taking. This draft has the Redskins taking Jeudy, a wide receiver out of Alabama. And this is another interesting pick. And kind of for the same reasons, I'm not a huge fan of taking wide receivers that I'm on a team that's kind of rebuilding. And don't get me wrong, I think Jeudy's an insane talent. I mean, like, considered the best receiver in the class. Like, obviously he's skilled. I mean, like, more skilled of a receiver than I'll ever be. But I feel like taking him here might not be the best decision. And one thing I even realized, like, after like watching a decent amount of NFL, is like receivers actually get injured a lot, like a lot more than I thought. I thought receivers was a position that didn't get injured that much, but they really do. So he could get injured and boom, he's immediately off the field. But I mean, barring a horrific injury, you know what I mean? Obviously, don't wish an injury on anyone. But let's say he doesn't get injured, right? So he stays healthy the whole season. So I'm looking right here. The Redskins actually did pretty good as far as getting sacks. They just drafted a Montez Sweat, defensive end out of Mississippi State, and then they had I think his name is Jonathan Allen, defensive end from Alabama that they drafted several years ago, and they've been pretty good as far as getting sacks and keeping the offenses down and keeping the other team's defense, tired, which I think is really important. But yeah, and the Redskins are decent. They just drafted Dwayne Haskins, so they're thinking like, okay, yeah, we just drafted Dwayne Haskins. We want to make him our franchise quarterback. Let's get him some weapons. People call him, I'll get him some weapons, which I think is a good idea. But here, let me look at actually okay, boom, right here. So Redskins are 6th worst in the league with taking 43 sacks on the season. So Dwayne Haskins is already taking a bunch of sacks. So just by getting a receiver out there, let's say your receiver can create space. Your quarterback can't do anything because he's on the ground. So that's why I'm not a huge fan of taking receivers. But then again, most extreme example, Michael Thomas from the Saints. He's obviously been insane as far as creating space. Getting multiple receptions, getting tons of receptions per game, leading the league in receiving yards. So I don't know. I'm kind of at a crossroads because I feel like skill positions are really important. Like having skilled players at your position. I'm kind of like a Bucs fan, and we have Mike Evans. He's obviously probably arguably our best receiver. Chris Godwin right there too. But these guys can create space. Are big receivers that can go up and get a lot of balls, and they've made Jameis's job a lot easier. But yeah, I feel like getting that might be a little bit premature for the Redskins. So I'm not a huge fan of that pick. So next is, if I had to recommend them something, I'd probably recommend they take an offensive lineman. I like that. But the one thing about the first round that I would say that taking a skill position in the first round is a good idea, is that you can get offensive linemen in the second round, third round. It doesn't really matter where you get it. So getting some really the skilled, the most talented players in college in the first round, and also big name players, getting someone who will attract some attention to your team. For example, if the Bengals draft Joe Burrow, people will finally pay attention to the Bengals because they get someone who's actually kind of a big name. Someone oh wow, I remember Joe Burrow, the biggest name in college football. He won the Heisman. I want to pay attention to these guys, see what they can do. So that's one reason why I would actually agree with taking some of these more skilled positions in early rounds. Is just because, I won't lie, it makes the team more interesting. I would agree with that. Anyways, next pick is going to be the Detroit Lions. They take Jeffrey Okudah, cornerback out of Ohio State. Cornerbacks, interesting position. Again, I've heard people say, I was watching this one mock draft, I think it was on from Pro Football Focus on YouTube, and they're saying, in this mock draft, we're gonna be avoiding picks like offensive line and basically they said offensive line, so we're gonna be taking really juicy picks, I guess they called it, really value positions like defensive end. And one pick they mentioned in particular was one position they mentioned in particular was the cornerback. They said it's a very value position, and I feel like a cornerback's success kind of depends on the line. I feel like everything comes back to the line, the trenches. And so, for example, if you look at some of the better cornerbacks in the league, so for example, Jalen Ramsey was considered one of the best cornerbacks in the league, if not the best. And he was in Jacksonville, also known as Sacksonville. They had a really good Defensive line with Calais Campbell, and they just drafted Josh Allen out of Kentucky. So if your line is pressuring the quarterback a lot, and then the quarterback throws up a bad ball, it makes your cornerback's job a lot easier. But if you don't have a good line, your cornerback is not going to be as good. So, for example, Jalen Ramsey was traded to the LA Rams. And I won't lie, I haven't really heard his name that much. You know what I'm saying? Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but I mean, has he been as effective on the Rams? Don't get me wrong, the Rams are actually they have a really good defensive line with what's his name, Aaron Donald and Dante Fowler. But yeah, I feel like Rams are actually almost close to leading the league in sacks per game. Yeah, I feel like Jalen Ramsey. I don't know. Maybe it's just the Rams scheme because, like I said, the Rams are actually really good when it comes to getting sacks per game. They're actually tied with the Jaguars right now. But another team, for example, would be Stephon Gilmore, the cornerback for the Patriots. The Patriots obviously have a really good defensive line. They pressure the quarterback a lot, so they throw up bad balls. And then he's already a good cornerback, but he's just right there to scoop it up. Like, imagine if Stephon Gilmore was on a team like the Bengals, for example. Like, would he be nearly as good if his team didn't pressure the quarterback a lot? So that's why I feel like cornerback it's a good position, but I feel like it's a position you should take once your team actually does a good job of pressuring the quarterback. And the Lions right now are toward the bottom of the league when it comes to sacks at 27 on the year. So I feel like they'd be better off getting a position that either A, pressures the quarterback, or B, and they're toward the bottom half of the league when it comes to actually protecting their quarterback, taking the 13th most sacks. It's either a position that either protects their quarterback or pressures the opponent quarterback. So I look for either offensive lineman or defensive lineman. But then again, if you're not going to do that, get a pick that's actually really a big name. You know what I mean? Someone who will actually, bring some marketability to your team. Like, that'll make your team really interesting. Like, there's Tua Tagovailoa, for example. Obviously, maybe they shouldn't take Tua because they obviously have Matt Stafford, even though he just got injured. Taking a big name, someone who will bring some attention to your team. But taking a cornerbacks already are by nature not that flashy of a position. So I feel like taking a cornerback there, probably not the best pick. Man, this is actually going pretty long, but here we'll do 2 more picks. We'll do 1 more pick and then we'll stop there. We'll do 2 more picks actually. So the next pick is going to be Arizona Cardinals taking Andrew Thomas, offensive tackle out of Georgia. Really good pick. I mean, I can't hate. I think taking offensive linemen is just a good idea. Protect your quarterback. They just got Kyler Murray. They want to protect him, allow him to do good. Obviously, he's insanely skilled. All right, so the last pick I want to do, since I am a Bucs fan, I want to jump down to pick 16 for the Bucs. And I just want to evaluate their pick. In this draft, they have him taking Curtis Weaver, defensive end out of Boise State. I won't even lie, I've never heard of the guy. But I like the pick because defensive ends, someone to help pressure quarterback. Look, the Niners, they drafted Nick Bosa. Probably, can I say the best pick in the draft? I can't argue that for sure. But he's obviously been really useful, you know what I mean, pressuring the quarterback. And he's been a pretty... would anyone complain that they took Nick Bosa with the 2nd overall pick? I don't think anyone would. But then there's Quinnen Williams, for example, the defensive tackle out of Alabama. He got drafted to the Jets. And I don't lie, I've been trying to keep tabs on him, but he's had a kind of quiet year. You know what I mean? And they bring him in, and he's an interior lineman. And in the interior, like I said, there's not a lot of space to actually get an advantage. So I know defensive linemen aren't supposed to get a lot of sacks, but they can when it comes to like stopping runs and stuff. But have the Jets been considered did their defense improve? I mean, I've seen some stuff that said their defense has improved. But like, has he really made as big of an impact as you'd like for your number 3 overall pick? So for that reason, I mean, I feel like interior defensive lineman is, I don't even know. It's kind of a hard pick to evaluate. It's kind of a hard player to evaluate. But yeah, the Bucs, they took 43 sacks this year. I mean, and Jameis is right now leading the league in passes, even though they've taken the 7th most sacks. So Jameis Winston, honestly, he actually plays really well. And people are just like talking about shipping him out of town. But I mean, I think he's a serviceable quarterback. He obviously has some turnover issues, but I think he's actually can be pretty good. And I mean, if they give him a little bit more help, I give him some more help. He obviously has one of the best receivers and a few of the best receivers in the league. You know what I mean? Maybe if they run the ball a little bit more and get it out of his hand as much, because he throws a ton, and it just gives so many opportunities for him to throw interceptions and make mistakes. But yeah, anyways, I like that pick, getting some more help on the defensive line. Looks like the Bucs are about toward the middle of the pack when it comes to getting sacks, even though they have Shaq Barrett, who I think is leading the league in sacks right now, which is awesome. He kind of came out of nowhere and is now leading the league in sacks. But just because they have this doesn't mean that they're one of the premier defenses. Obviously, everyone's always commenting on the Bucs defense. I think Bucs have been drafting a ton of defensive backs, safeties, cornerbacks. Let's say about quarterback. I mean, it makes the cornerback's job a lot easier if the quarterback's getting pressured. So I think getting some defensive line help, some talent on the defensive end position would be helpful. For example, people were saying that the Bucs should take Christian Fulton, cornerback out of LSU. I saw the draft for Pro Football Focus, and they were saying, cornerback's just a position you just keep throwing draft capital at it until it sticks. Maybe not the best idea. Like, don't get me wrong. They're almost certainly a lot smarter than me over at Pro Football Focus. But I feel like drafting Christian Fulton wouldn't make that big of a difference, because they already drafted a lot. They already drafted first, second round cornerbacks, and it hasn't been working. They're just saying keep throwing draft capital at it. I feel like that is a mistake, when instead they could do something that's a little bit more sure in getting some more help on the line. So I like this pick. Anyways, this video is going pretty long, so with that being said, I only got through like 7 picks. Man, I actually had more to say about this than I might have thought. But anyways, I think that actually went pretty good. So with that being said, I'm going to end it here. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.